Hello, co-ordination. Welcome to Offensive Embedded Exploitation by co-ordination. Myself, Security Beast, also known as myself, co-ordination, also known as Security Beast. Once again, welcome to Offensive Embedded Exploitation, getting hands dirty with embedded on IoT devices. In this 45 minutes brief, we are going to touch base upon how to test an embedded device like a server, or like how to pen test an IoT or embedded device. Okay, so let's get started with introduction. Agenda. So agenda for this talk is, first we will have an introduction to IoT. Then we will set up our machine for testing. What is the minimum requirement for testing? Then we will have recognition, how to perform recognition in IoT devices. Then we will have a firmware analysis, and post that we will see how to test dynamic testing of device, and lastly we will touch base upon fuzzing, reverse engineering and exploit development. So fuzzing, reverse setting environment for fuzzing, reverse engineering and exploit development is quite a big task. So I'm just going to demonstrate on ready setup environment how to test for the fuzzing. Okay, so let me introduce myself. Myself, Security Beast on internet and Coastal Padwar from India. I have a 2 dozens of CVs, mostly on embedded system, and I'm a product security researcher. Love reverse engineering, exploit development, and Linux. And yes, I love to share my knowledge. So I give a talk to conferences. And now let's get started with introduction of IoT. So I have classified IoT in three different categories. One is a industrial IoT, or or IoT is as a industry wide, that is industrial IoT. Second, in human or in body IoT, and third, other than human and building or transport IoT. So nowadays every industry is using IoT by some or other ways. For example, manufacturing industry started using IoT to improve the quality of product, to keep monitoring of product. For example, like this ice cream vendors, or let's say anyone who want to store their product in a cool environment or freezer kind of environment. So what they do, they just buy some small chips, basically device having modem, which will sense the temperature, and if freeze is locked down in warehouse, sorry, if freeze is powered off in a warehouse for some while, then it will generate an alert and send it to the warehouse manager, so that he will come to know that in such a large environment, like let's say 200 or 300 chillers freeze, one freeze is not working. So how he can keep track of it? Just by using small IoT sensor. That IoT sensor will sense that temperature is increasing, that means freeze is power off. Or he can or IoT sensor can monitor the electricity of fridge also, that electricity is not working, that way then it will generate an alert sent to the warehouse manager. So manufacturing industries also started using IoT for every other aspect. Government can start use IoT. For example, let's say a street light consumes a lot of energy if it is turned on a whole night, compared to street light uh, street light running for 2 or 3 hours. So let's say we have almost 50,000 to 1 lakh street light in a city. Now that 51 lakh street light is generating loads on electricity, that this street light will turn on every time. Like it started at 10 o'clock night till morning 5 o'clock. Okay. Now if you buy some $5 sensor, put it on street light, and that sensor will sense when the vehicle is passing or someone is passing, then only light will turn on, and rest of the time the light will be turned off. So what happen is, like, low electricity consumption will reduce a lot. because not all roads are moving, or all roads are not always occupied in the night, right? So it makes sense that we will keep a light turned off and we will turn it on only when if vehicle is passing. Okay. So mobility is the key element. Like in IoT, there is one interface called narrowband IoT, NB-IoT. That is the whole provider for NB-IoT platform is a ISPs, mobile ISPs. So mobility and Wi-Fi also started using IoT. And for sending a 8-bit data to 10-bit data, you does not need LTE connection or full working internet connection. So in that case, you can send you can establish a NB-IoT connection which work as a NIDD, means non-IP based data delivery mechanism. Then digital citizens, that is us, we are having wearable gadgets, we are having too many fancy stuff nowadays. Then health is the next key element which I am going to cover here. And smart agriculture or farming. Let's say in many people are like in rural areas, there are time when the load shedding are very high. So you may find electricity only during this time to this time. Even at some very rural space, there are scenes where the owner is not aware of when that power is going to come. So let's say midnight, 3 o'clock, electricity came. Then he have to wake up and he have to go to his farm and he have to turn on that pump, and it will start flowing the water. So what IoT sensor can do? You install one small device to the motor, and when the electricity will come, it will automatically start the water supply. And even we can put sensors in a soil that up to, if the soil is this much wet, then turn off the electricity. So this kind of smart farming can be done. Smart building, I have an excellent example in the next slide. Also power grid, also smart meter is coming. Like earlier they used to come at our place for taking reading and cutting the electricity bill is not paid. Now they are coming with a smart meter. Like they are introducing one NIC card, network card, that will connect it to meter, and that meter will they can operate that meter directly from the electricity head office. So they can take the readings using that smart chip, or they can turn off the electricity also from that chip. And for smart transportation, Tesla is an amazing example. No need to say anything about that. Now let's have a look. This is an industrial IoT, which is also useful for us, but it's kind of majorly industrial IoT. Now let's have a look at in-body IoT system. Here I can see some. Here I have I got this image from internet. So here I can see there is an insulin pump. There are pacemakers. There are implants, implants inside the body. So these equipments are inside the body IoT. So the growth of IoT is super fast, and it's amazing. Means what to say? IoT is inside the body, IoT is outside the body, IoT is everywhere. We are surrounded by IoT products. And apart from this, IoT products are coming for cattle tracker too. So like everyone loves their pet a lot. So to track your pet or to track your pet's activity, researcher or some companies are started developing a IoT belt. So that belt will be tied to the neck of that pet, and based on his body temperature, his behavioral patterns, it will create an alert if pet is not well or if pet is lost. You can track that pet using IoT. So many such kind of use cases are in market with the IoT product. So as we can see, everything is getting occupied by IoT. And what is IoT? IoT is a chip which is connected to the internet. Okay. So let's have a look at smart building example, which I talked in earlier slide.
天猫精灵，关闭窗帘。
正在关闭窗帘。
天猫精灵，打开电视。天猫精灵，
主人，你说。
我需要一瓶水。
好的，服务员会尽快送来饮用水。机器人正在执行配送任务中，进入电梯。
The self-check-in machine, like the guest mobile check-in, like the robot service and homogeneous voice butler. The purpose of this kind of service and technology is to improve the efficiency of the service and the consistency of the service quality.
您可以取出物品了。
I think everybody wants to visit this hotel now, once at least. They should give me some share or for promoting their hotel. Okay, now with the growing IoT integration or with the growing IoT everywhere in the field, the risk is also increasing with IoT. So let's have a look at some hot news in IoT. Have you heard about witchcraft? So grandparents used to tell me a story that there is a witchcraft. So which some people, some bad guys instruct witch to kill someone, and that we go and kill someone. So I don't know whether it exists or not, but with IoT you can kill someone. So medical pumps and pacemaker treat as a doctor simulated hacked overdose. Just an example, if I got a control over your pacemaker and I increase the heartbeat from whatever your heartbeat is to 500 per second. Tell me who can stop you? Who can stop me from giving you a heart attack? No one, right? So IoT is that critical. Let's say you have a child diabetic patient who cannot take care of herself. So you have to give insulin to her on some particular interval. So you are triggering this insulin from remote or from your mobile application. Let's say if that mobile application got compromised or if that whole ecosystem got compromised, you can imagine the loss, right? It is super critical. So the risk of medical equipment in IoT is super critical. So that is the extremist. Like hacking those devices is not so easy. And my views on this is like I have tested few of those devices, and I know it's super secure. They have proprietary code, proprietary protocols, which do not even expose to rest of the world. But yes, still someone managed to give a doctor simulated hack overdose, right? So risk is always there. So even one more thing I feel is like this kind of devices should get tested globally. Like we don't know what hackers mindset other country people have, right? So if Germany is manufacturing, Germany should get it tested with everyone. Or if USA is manufacturing, they should also get it tested with everyone. You buy a smart robot to surveillance at your home, and you know what? Robot get that robot is used as a spy by hackers. So again, oh my god, Mirai based botnet IoT device turns into a proxy server. So this is like when it says a devices, it's not in hundreds or it's not in thousands, it's in millions and billions of devices. So when it comes to a connected world, you just have to figure out one way to compromise the device, and you have to show down that device, and immediately you will get access to millions and millions of devices. I always feel like somebody's listening to me. Again, hackers turn this camera into a spying machine. So risk is everywhere. No comments. FDA recalls nearly 500,000 pacemakers over hacking fear. So these are the some critical hot news, IoT hot news, which I found. And based on this news, you may come up with a imagination that how critical aspect is that IoT security is. And in this talk, we are going to cover some of the one device, not some of device, one device, and the topic of this means device of this talk is IP phone. How and the concept behind this talk is, can this decent looking IP phone changes into a botnet? Okay, so why IP phone? Means why I choose an IP phone? Because every large corporate have at least 40 to 50,000 IP phones, generally from same vendor. Now let's assume that if you are managed to compromise 10 large corporates, so let's how much it is? 50,000 into 10, that is 25 million, right? 25 million. Okay, or TO 2.5 million, whatever. I'm weak at math. So just if you are able to compromise the 10 organizations having same IP phone, let's say a volume of 50,000 IP phones, and some organizations behavior or work is calling, like let's say BPO or KPO. So finding 50,000 IP phone in corporate is not a big deal. And if you are able to compromise 10 such kind of organizations, then you will easily get 2.5 million of IP phones. With one exploit, you can rule them all. And you means, let's say if you are asked that bots, then if you find an exploit to root this device remotely, that means those devices are your bots now. And if you instruct your bots to perform a 10 requests per second, then how much it is? 25 billion requests per second. You think any big server like Facebook, Amazon, Google are able to bear such kind of load? No, right? And we are just talking about one country. Now imagine if you manage to get access over multiple countries. So like 50,000 bots, 1 lakh bots, 10 lakh bots, million bots, billions and billions of bots with one expert, right? An IP phone is the most common gadget you can see in your day-to-day life. Okay, so let's see how to do it. Before we start this, I have a disclaimer that this video is purely for educational purpose. Author is not responsible for misusing this video. Okay, and views are my own of this video, and this material is purely prepared by me. My employer does not represent anything. Okay, so before we start with embedded device security testing, we have to have a look at, we have to set up our machine. Okay, so I have classified this setup into two categories. One is basic setup and second is advanced setup. So let's have a look what we need in a basic setup. First, we need a Linux. Why Linux? Many Windows fans are here, but why Linux is because supports multiple protocols, multiple devices, multiple community access, and multiple flavors, which gives you a wide support for multiple devices. Also, Linux runs from everywhere, from machine, from POS to computer to supercomputer. So Linux, understanding Linux is also important, and working on Linux is also means working with Linux is also important. Third, we have to deal with the MIPS system, MIPS processor, and ARM processor majorly. So MIPS little endian and MIPS big endian, and ARM versions of it like 5, 6, 7, some more and all. So we can virtualize these things in Linux. So let's say you found one binary which you want to fuzz in your laptop. So now what? To do that, you need to set up a QEMU virtualization for ARM. Let's say if the binary is ARM, or MIPS virtualization by using QEMU. So you can first that binary with a QEMU and QEMU with QEMU emulator. So Linux supports seamless integration of QEMU with MIPS or ARM, whatever processor you want to run. And it never says it's an unknown device. It's always recognize a bit of device. Okay. Second, I generally prefer Kali Linux because it comes up with lots and lots of tools and lots of libraries. So second, we are not an electronic guy. Why it is here? A JTAGulator. JTAG is the de facto standard for testing. So so if you are not able to find anything on the device, you will definitely find JTAG, which is means if you are not able to find a USB interface, if you are not able to find the serial interface, if you are not able to find a LAN card, WAN card, but definitely you will find a JTAG because it is a de facto standard for factory debugging. Now let's assume that hundreds of millions of devices get manufactured. How these guys are ensuring that each and every part of device is working? You might have seen that QC pass sticker. They connect device using JTAG and they check for entire PCB using JTAG whether it is working or not. So it works on RX, TX, and all those stuff. So we need a JTAG. So if you are not able to find any interface, definitely JTAG will be there. Now API Mute. It's not Mute. It's a API Mute. Why we need a API Mute? When we talk about IoT, we more talk about a stuff called wireless stuff, then wireless things, connected things. So these things are generally connected with the RF, right, radio frequencies. In IoT, there are few interfaces like Zigbee or Z-Wave, which are wireless frequencies, which we need to capture. And to capture those kind of wireless communication, we need a API Mute. And yes, lastly, connectors. These are life. You at least need this kind of setup. One extra WAN card, one extra LAN card, one extra Bluetooth adapter, screwdriver set, and this is a Skira which support your GPIO, SPI communication, JTAG communication, and UART communication. So it is all in one tool. You should purchase this at least two for starting testing, and HackRF for hacking radio frequency. Okay. So this all setups may cost you. Linux is free. JTAGulator, API Mute, and these connectors might cost you not more than 1 lakh rupees or 1,30,000. Last quotation which I got from multiple people. Okay, means multiple websites, e-commerce websites. So you will set up everything this in between 1,20,000 or 30,000 rupees. Okay, so that's not a huge cost for to get started with IoT, right? So all you need is this to get started IoT testing. Okay, now let's move towards advanced setup. There is no limit for advanced setup. As you start testing devices, you need more and more connector, more and more ways to interact with the device, and your lab your lab will become something like this. So there is no limit for adding gadgets to your collection. All you need is these things to get started. Okay. This is okay. Now we got a hardware. What are the tools or what are the weapons we need for testing? So basically, we need all these softwares majorly. A binwalk for firmware analysis, Firmadyne for firmware emulation, Burp Suite for everyone knows why we need a Burp Suite, but it's a proxy tool. Python, we need to automate lots of stuff, so we need a Python. And lastly, IDA Pro. Reverse engineering is the life in embedded device testing. Without reverse engineering, you cannot test the device because most of the devices are closed source and they are using proprietary standards to communicate, which is not exposed. And to understand this, you need to perform a reverse engineering. I suggest you should take one binary a week and reverse it and write a source code of it. It will make you a master one day in reverse engineering. Okay, all these weapons are needed. Now let's move towards the most important phase of embedded device testing or any security assessment, that is recognition. Okay. So I still remember when I got this device for testing, I was still wondering, means what? I got IP phone. This is like my calling box. What I should do a security assessment. But no, there are many things you should do. Means like our regular pen test, we have to perform recognition of embedded device. So what we have to look? First, FCC ID of the device. There are FCC IDs on each device. You can search it online where you will get all supported features of the device. Let's say if vendor is hiding something from you, and to check whether it is supported or not, you should always tally the device specification and datasheet with FCC ID. So I still remember an incident where vendor was saying this device don't have Wi-Fi, and we found in FCC ID device is having Wi-Fi. So what we did, we routed the device somehow. We load the Wi-Fi module and we showed them that it is searching for frequencies now, and we ensure the connection using WPS applicant with other Wi-Fi device to demonstrate. So sometimes vendor may lie. It's not that, and some vendors don't lie at you. Okay, I'm not blaming anyone. So you should first have a look at FCC ID where you will get all device specification and data sheet. Second, you should know what architecture of device is. Means, is it a pure Linux device? Is it an Android device? Is it a hybrid device? Means some components from Android they have taken, some components from Linux they have taken, or it's a RTOS device, or it's just a MCU. So identifying the architecture of device is pretty much important. Then underlying OS, as I told you. Then you have to see what processor they are using. Like, is it a MIPS device? Is it an ARM device? Or what processor they are using? Some might use Intel Atom also, or some might use Freescale processor also. So understanding that processor, what kind of storage they are using, what kind of RAM they are using. So you have to study that PCB to identify components on it. What modem they are using? Does that modem supports NB-IoT communication, or that modem supports only LTE communication, or what are the things are there in PCB? So you have to drill down into each component of the PCB to understand your device, and identify a interface to interact with the device and act accordingly. That is the master formula for it. So I'll tell you what are the interfaces available with us. Okay, so some interface have IoT specific interface, like NIDD. You will not found in your daily communication. ADB is quite often we found it on Android phone, but Android IoT devices which is based on ADB, Android you may find a ADB there. Also, USB stick is a way to interact with IoT devices. Like, you put some kind of files in USB pen drive, you connect that pen drive to a device, and that device will perform some action. Okay, so USB is also one way. Then there are Zigbee, Z-Wave, then Bluetooth Low Energy Protocol, and some closed source or proprietary communication. Like, there are UART pins, but you cannot connect to chip because it needs an additional chip. So you connect UART to that chip, and that chip will convert your signal into specific UART signal to the PCB. Okay, so this kind of scenarios happen in IoT. And what do you think, apart from this, what are some other ways to communicate with this device? So here is a LAN port. Also, this device might have support for Wi-Fi. Then you can check for telnet, you can check for SSH, you can check for serial communication, you can check for Zigbee Z-Wave communication, you can check for a Bluetooth, you can check for a Bluetooth attack also, and some IoT specific, like some device specific, like TR069 protocol, like CWMPC kind of protocol. So first thing is to understand your device, what it supports and what it have. Once you understood your device, then you should always be like this. I want more, I want more, I want more. You should be asking for your Mitrokin archive. Give me every possible details of this device, which includes but not limited to a product specification document, a user manual, and algorithm management document, and magic number document. So let's see what it is. Product specification document generally talk about what this product supports to. For example, here we can see this supports this many protocols. So based on this protocol support itself, we are able to find a vulnerability. Like this supports this device support SIP version 2. That means it does not support SIP TLS. Also, it supports only SNMP v2, which is quite vulnerable, and it's also support only RTP, not SRTP. So secure. So if you are able to sit in between device, and if you are able to capture the traffic between IPBX and IP phone, you may able to listen about your boss talking about your appraisal. Okay, and here from user manual, I found some interesting stuff. Is firmware is upgradable, web management interface, password management, local and remote syslog, HTTP and HTTPS support, and multi-level user management. And also this support TR069. That means device have multiple users. So what happen is like if you change the password for admin user, you may forget to change the password for support user. So that becomes the easiest way to take over the device. Now let's have a look at this algorithm. Why we need an algorithm document? Let's say your device is highly secured, but you are generating if there is a router device which is highly secured and it is tested by everyone and it is super secure, but you are generating SSID password by running MD5 sum on the MAC address of the device. Does it make sense? No, right? Because you can easily capture the MAC address of the device by capturing beacon packets, right? And once you capture a beacon packet, and if you know that they are using MD5 sum to generate a password for SSID, you can simply run, and basically you can compromise any router of that series, right? So that's why we need to review algorithm like password generation algorithm, or let's say web GUI password generation algorithm, Wi-Fi password generation algorithm, Bluetooth pin generation algorithm. Many kind of algorithms are there. We need to review each and every algorithm. You should ask a vendor for providing an algorithm document. And now come to a magic number. So what is magic number? Generally, you have many gadgets, right? You took one of gadget. Let's say if it is not working, you visit service center. What magic does those guys do that we cannot? Those guys uh, access the engineering interface or debugging interface of your device by entering some secret codes. Like Android have secret codes to enable debug mode, disable debug mode, enable DAG mode, disable DAG mode, enable COM port, which we see that is DAG mode itself, or some additional like enable USB no, enable ADB, or enable UART. There are codes which you need to enter in a web GUI or on a dial pad of the device. So you have to review that magic number generation algorithm also to see is that a secure way. Like long back the device some in India idea net setter was there, which is locked with the idea. So maybe they have I'm not sure whether they have a P11 lock in it, or whether they have whitelisted MCC MNC. But you know there was a way. If you these dongles was manufactured by Huawei. So if you give a serial number, someone wrote a keygen. So if you enter that keygen, this device generally wipes off their whitelisted MCC and MNC, and you can use a Airtel SIM card into Idea and etc. So that was long back in maybe a 2008 or 9. I'm talking. I found that. Okay, so you should be aware that what are the things means. Is that magic number generation mechanism is secured or not? And here are some interesting stuff like default username for admin mode is admin, default username for user mode is user, and default password is null, blank. I mean, just enter admin and enter, you will get a device access. You should never trust the security in embedded system. Okay, That is like, it's unbelievable. Okay, and whenever you perform a full port scan, whenever you perform a port scan on embedded device, ensure that you always perform a full port scan. Because I found a code execution on port 1380, I found a remote denial of service in 41565, and a local denial of service on 4046. No, sorry, 4046 I found a debug interface, and 23255 it is a random populating port. I found again local denial of service attack. So whenever you are performing a port scan on embedded device, you should always perform a full port scan. Okay, so that's it for recognition. I'm available on Discord. If you have any question, you can drop me. Now let's move towards our next topic, that is firmware analysis. So agenda for this is, what is firmware, obtaining firmware, unpacking firmware, and finding vulnerabilities in firmware. So what is firmware? A firmware is a file which generally consists of file system, kernel, and bootloader of the device. Any file which contain these three things, or sometimes kernel and file system, or sometimes only delta, is called a firmware file. It's a basically bin file which we download from website here, and we can update in the firmware upgrade section of the device. So how to obtain that firmware? Not all vendors always give you firmware, but those who are good vendor, you can download it from their website. Like D-Link provides a download, Netgear provides a download, many router provides a download. So you can download it from their website, or those who don't want to give you a download, you can set up an interception between your device and ISP, and you can check for update. So if the update is available, you can download that update, and that that downloaded update will be set up at interception server. So you can extract from update. Then you can extract from device. So if you have a UART access of device, you can basically perform a tar compression of all the file system, and you can extract it from there. And Google Doc like index of FTP will be there. Some devices perform, most of the devices perform silent upgrade in embedded. So one fine night you check the time of your device, and you browse WhatsApp, Facebook, and you slept. Next day morning, phone is showing you that even your battery is charged, phone is restarted. So how this phone get restarted? It's because vendor forcefully pushed your silent upgrade. In that silent upgrade, device get updated automatically. Okay, so you should always have one proxy server. So all your house internet will be routed to that. So if any such kind of activity happen, you will found a logs on proxy server where you can download the firmware file. Now you got a firmware. Now what? Are you going to run a binwalk-e on it? No, you should not. Ideally, you should not. Once I ran a binwalk-e, it runs a forever, and it's full my 1 TB data by generating garbage. So first thing first is, you have to understand whether firmware is compressed or encrypted. If the firmware is encrypted, and if you are running binwalk-e, it is gonna generate a garbage only. But if the firmware is compressed, it's gonna extract in a proper way. Okay, so you should run binwalk-E. It will generate an entropy, and it will show you something like this. Mostly a Cisco's firmware, very hard to break. So if you found entropy is 1, that means this section is super encrypted. But here are some section which is not, which is below 1, here and here. So this section is not encrypted. So what you can do, you can extract exact those offsets. Sometimes it may contain a key to decrypt the firmware, or sometimes it may contain a string to decrypt the firmware. But not all vendors do that. Some initial vendors or some getting started vendors do such kind of stuff. I got a private keys to decrypt the firmware by extracting those offsets, and I managed to decrypt the firmware with OpenSSL, and then I was managed to extract this firmware. Okay, Also, you can perform a signature analysis, so you will come to know what kind of file system you have. So like in Windows, we have a NTFS, FAT file system. In Linux, we have ext1234. Similarly, on embedded device, there are multiple file systems like CramFS, YZFS, UBFS, SquashFS, and list of it. Like these are quite popular, and you often see such kind of names. Okay, so in signature analysis, you will come to know what kind of file system is there, and then you should perform you should if the firmware is compressed, you should extract that firmware with a binvoc hyphen e, small e. This is for entropy. Okay, now you perform a firmware analysis. Now what? Now you got a firmware, and luckily you got a decrypted firmware, and you managed to extract that firmware. Now what you should look in a firmware? Obviously, passwd file for obtaining device username and password, document root of the device to get a source code of web UI, application binaries for reverse engineering and identifying critical vulnerabilities such as hard-coded credentials, system injection, shell command injection, local injection, privilege escalation vulnerability. Then you should look for a shell script, what shell script it have. Then you can look for a SQLite DB, so to obtain a web UI credential or some additional credentials. Yes, these devices also uses SQLite DB. You can look for a conf file, you can look for a cron job, what are the malicious cron job are running, or you can look for the shell script which is having 777 permission, which may help you in a privilege escalation. You can search for the firmwares inside the firmware. So like in one device, I found that device having one MCU and one core processor. That core processor is fetching data from MCU. So the core processor was responsible for management of the firmware of that MCU. So you can look for the firmware files inside the firmware files also. Okay, and a web server, then TR069 configuration to ensure that device is properly accepting updates from proper server. Device is validating server. Also, server will validate the device. That is different part. But device should also validate. Let's say if tomorrow I created one malicious ACS server and device start and if I start ask if I started accepting any credentials provided by device, but I am able to reconfigure the device because device is not validating the server. Okay, so such kind of configuration you look. Okay, now how to set up a device? So we have perform reconnaissance of device, we have performed firmware analysis. Now we have pretty much information of device. Now what? Let's say our IP phone have a LAN port. So what I did, I connected a router. That router connects to my laptop and device, means our IP phone. That router gives an IP to IP phone by DHCP and give it to me. I just thought to ping that IP address which is shown in the IP phone, and boom, it works. So generally, if the device is having wireless access, you can connect your wireless port to device, means Wi-Fi to device. If device is having LAN port, then you can give a LAN port to the device, and you can connect with UART and serial and those kind of stuff also. Okay, now what is the first obvious thing that I might have done? Nmap, right? Yes, I did a Nmap full port scan with all possible flags and see what I found. In just one Nmap, I found a root of the device. So that device is having a telnet server running, and I connect with the admin, and it gives me a shell that is UID 0. Okay, so it's like compromising server in a minute. Then I found that web server is running on ATN 443. One port I found 7547 and 53 was filtered on the device. So what is 7547? That is Technical Report 069 protocol. You can read about it on Google. Basically what max I can tell you right now is you can completely reconfigure the device from anywhere in the world by using this protocol. And 53 is our DNS mask. And what OS guess it shows? Device is running Linux kernel 2.6. Now it is 4. And precisely version is between 2.6.17 to 2.6.36 based on TCP fingerprints. So can you imagine how many exploits will be there for this version? It's really unimaginable, right? Some exploit might have remote, or some exploit we can use for privilege escalation. Okay, so this is how you can get start and get motivated for starting a device. At least you can compromise device in very short time. Now what I did in dynamic testing, I just open a web UI. Here I put admin login. Here is the request and here is the response. So what I found here is they are not using even extreme option. So device is vulnerable for clickjacking vulnerability, right? As they are not using a extreme option, device is vulnerable for clickjacking, right? So make a note of it. Device is vulnerable for clickjacking. I know in bug bounty programs, clickjacking is the lowest severity vulnerability, and it won't get accepted, right? But one of guy found $6,000 from Google clickjacking with command execution. Okay, let it be. Let's stick to the topic. We have one vulnerability as of now, that is clickjacking. Now I browse a device for a while and I found that here is a request, set system administration. So here I found everything. Like in this one request, admin type admin user admin, then admin password was there, that is admin. I don't know why I hide that. WEM login, then telnet remote legal IP 0.0.0.0. I think this is the most dangerous string. Telnet port is default, local telnet is enable, telnet security code is blank, then remote telnet is 1, and web remote legal IP again 0.0.0. I think this is the most dangerous configuration I ever seen. Okay, so I found everything you can set up with this one request. Each and every parameter, like radius shared secret is there, radius vendor ID, radius access level, NTP enable or not, everything. But you know what I found here is this device also don't have a request validation. So it is not validating a source from where it is originating, and also it is not validating a request whether it is genuine or not. So this device is vulnerable for request forgery. So after working for some more time on device, generally I'll tell you every device have two interfaces. One is backup and second is DAG, diagnostic page. These two interfaces generally used to interact with the system, basically underlying operating system of a device. You take a backup. In backup, you will find some options which are not present in a web UI. For example, enabling telnet, disabling telnet, SSH, enabling SSH, or this kind of stuff you will find in a backup file, but not in a web UI. Okay, so this kind of stuff are there. And secondly, a DAG port, diagnostic page. So why that page is there? To check connectivity, like ping command is there, traceroute command is there. You know what I did? I found this. Oh, oh, I found this with a reverse. I found this by reverse engineering the binary. Okay, sorry for the mess. I pressed wrong button. Just a second. Huh. Okay, come back to our topic. I found this vulnerability by reverse engineering. Okay, this binary. What I did is in a destination IP, I just entered ID command, and you know what? It gives me a root access. So from web UI itself, you have a code execution on the system. If I enter nc-lvp1337 and click on apply, what's gonna happen? It's giving me a bind shell, right? I can connect it wherever I want. And also if I say echo in double quote nc-lvp1337 redirect to /etc/rc.local, what it's gonna do? As this is running with a GID 0 or UID 0, does it going to stop us from writing in rc.local? No. Then what it's going to do? It's going to create a persistent backdoor for us. Okay. Hold it. It's not over still. Now you have a click jacking, you have a request forgery, and you have command injection. Make one fancy web page, add something like we have updated our organization policy, and you have to click on I agree. By using UI readdressing, CSRF, and shell command injection, you have to you can make a test POC. You can make a POC which is hosted on server, and when you click on I agree, it will execute the command on your device. That's it. Hopefully you like this concept, but how can we turn this IP phone into a botnet? Okay, now let's move towards the last section of our talk, that is fuzzing, reverse engineering, and exploit development. So I have not covered here how to set up a testing environment, how to set up a fuzzing environment, what needs to be enabled on device, how to obtain the GDB server, how to make a connection between GDB server and GDB multia. So my training with my training for DEF CON offensive embedded exploitation of 2 hours is there on YouTube. If you are interested in this section more, you can check that training. Okay, so basically I will tell you what we have to do. We have to install a BusyBox on device once you get the root. Okay, first thing is getting the root, getting that shell is the most important. Okay, somebody asked me why we need to first device more if you have a root by exploiting some vulnerabilities. So first, we are a security researcher. We are not a hacker. We just don't need to find one way to exploit the device. We have to shut all the doors for accessing the device. Okay. So first thing is how to get the root. There are various ways to obtain the shell by exploiting web vulnerabilities, firmware analysis, document review, default credential, and reverse engineering the binary. So in this specific scenario, I found it by reverse engineering the binary. Okay, and I managed to get the shell of the device. So once you get the shell, you have to install a BusyBox with full support. So it will smooth your life. Means you will get you get all the command which are required on the device. Then you have to download a GDB server. You have to find for the process which you need to first. Then you have to attach that process, and also you have to enable a core pattern. Let's say by the core pattern, writing that core pattern to TMP or somewhere, means you have to enable a core dump. Sorry, and core pattern you can set whatever you want. Yeah, and you have to set a U limit unlimited. Okay, then you are good to start. So basically, I generally prefer a HTTP fuzzing and generally prefers unauthenticated exploit. So once I set up a device completely, there was a web server called Boa which is running with a /boa root in daemon mode. Okay, user FS binary and Boa was running. So what I did is I logged in, I intercepted a login request, admin credential request, and then I took into a intruder. So this was the first list, basically A times of A, like 1000, then 2000, then 5000, then 10,000. So it's A only, nothing special. I loaded this first list into a intruder's payload, and I fired a request. So here you can see after 2000 A, there is no response from device. So that means something malicious happened. At backend, you can see here caught 6 serve dumping core in /tmp. Again, it caught 6 serve dumping core in /tmp. Again, it got 6 serve and dumping core in /tmp. So you might be wondering, if we manage to crash the web server, then why it is starting again? So in devices, basically a procmon is running, so it keeps eyes on all processes or particular interval, and if it found that process is dead, it start again. Okay. So basically, you might be understood that this is a plain stack overflow, vanilla stack overflow, which we are able to trigger via admin request. Now identify who triggers the request, who triggers the overflow. So this parameter, specific password parameter, when we fired a 5000 O at this request, request number 2110, device got crashed. Now what? MSF pattern create of 5000 len. Obviously, we created a pattern and we send it. So here is the interface of PwnGDB. When I connect to the device, target remote device, and port this, and debugging start. So fire this request and see what are those offsets are. So again, this is something it looks like. So I found first the BOA process ID, then I ran a GDB server, attached this process, and server is running on port 1337. And in previous slide I show you how it got connected. Okay, now we got this here. It was our crash report. Okay, so with this crash, we can see what registers we have access to. Here you can see a T4 register, T7 register, and from register S0 to S3 we have access, and a return pointer also we have access. All good. We have 16 bytes to write our shell code, and we have control over return address. It's self-explanatory. In first case, we have to perform a malicious action. We have to host the server, we have to find 3 vulnerabilities, we have to chain it. But here, it's boom boom. You fired an exploit, device is yours. You will get a reverse shell, bind shell, whatever you want. This is mission critical. Like now you start searching for IP phones connected to internet, target one of them and improve your skills while learning offensive and exploitation. So I wrote this exploit to prove that we have access to register and we can execute the code on the device. So here is the exploit, which says I'm going to write it a complete login request. Then in password field there is a padding till 999. Then we have access from 1000 to 1004. This is T4, T7, T7. Then again some padding. Then we have access to T6 register. Then again padding. Then S0, S1, S2, S3, and S4. And when you run this exploit, you get this image. Here you can see S0, S0, S1, S1, S2, S2, S3, S3 in a register byte. And here is in T4 and T7 those respective values. So here I will put a shell code and I will call that shell code by using reverse shell. Hope you enjoyed the session. I am answering question already on Discord. This is a credits for images and memes and some IoT Smart City which we discussed earlier. Thank you everyone. Hope you loved the session. You can follow me at Twitter at securitybeast, or you can mail me. If you have a query, you can mail me at kingkosav@mail.com. Thank you. Thank you Manu for giving me an opportunity to present at KoCon. Thanks a lot.